What's up guys, Matt here coming at you with some more Losi Promoto MX info. This one we're going to talk about getting more brake power out of this thing, because if you ran one of these, you probably noticed the brake is pretty light. It takes a long way to slow this thing down. On the concrete, blacktop, if you're really moving, it's going to take you a long distance to stop this thing. And then I feel like on the dirt, on the tracks, most tracks weren't built for these things. You've got a lot of landings straight into turns, so you're going to want more brake power there as well. So you are going to have to purchase one of these Spektrum ESC programmers. I'll link it in the description. This is a great tool to have around because it allows you to change so many different settings on your ESCs. I've used it on my X-Max and several others. So very nice to have it around. You know, you have to buy once, cry once with this one, but it does give you quite a bit of tuning options. So we're going to take this out here, run it stock, see about how far it takes us to stop this thing. Then we're going to come in, we'll bump it to 50%, we'll run the same test, and hopefully that's going to give us enough brake power. So let's get right into programming this. I'm going to show you exactly where you're going to plug it in and then what settings you need to change. So depending on where your plug is, you may have to take more of this off. When I first started trying to get into this, I took off this plastic, the entire side. I was just really trying to figure out where the plug was to plug this programmer in. Luckily, mine was actually tucked in to where I can just remove this one 2.5 millimeter screw right here, and you'll pull out the other side of it, which it screws into, is this piece. So this upper brace here is the one that a lot of people have been breaking. You're going to rotate it out of the way. So really all you got to do is kind of push up on it and pull out. Now, my plug is actually just tucked right here. So since I know exactly where it is, I can get to mine fairly easy now. You may have a little more trouble, and you may have to remove some more plastics. So you can now see this plug sticking out just a little bit. Worst case, you may have to remove this plastic as well. Mine was tucked just underneath this piece here, where I could take my driver in there and just kind of snake it out. So we are going to have to connect the battery so we can power this thing up. I'm running these Zeee packs. I've seen a lot of people ask about if they can run a 7.6 volt. I've been running these with no issues, haven't messed anything up yet. Okay, so we have our plug out here ready to plug up our programmer. One thing you need to make sure is you have the V2 programmer. I will link it in the description. If you want to use the link, that's great, it helps out the channel. If you don't, just make sure you get a V2, because this one is not the correct settings. It will change, if you change the brake percentage on here, it changes your motor direction and you'll have reverse and no forward. Make sure you have a V2. So we're just going to connect this, matching up the wires. All right, so we've got this all connected. We're going to turn it on. We're going to hit the save button. It's going to start connecting the ESC. Boom, we're connected. So here we're going to use the select button to cycle through our different settings. We're not going to mess with any of this right now besides the max brake. So stock it's set at 62.5. We're going to bump this. Let's just do the 87.5 and see. You can even do 100. But let's see if the 87 is noticeable. So once you get the setting that you want, you're going to hit save. That should save it, and we're good to go. You can see you also have running mode, forward brake. You have a forward brake reverse, but you're not going to get reverse out of this. Your reverse is your brake. You can change your motor rotation, all of that. BEC voltage. That'd probably be handy down the road if we upgrade servos. We can bump those up, get a little quicker, snappier steering. And then you can always restore default if you want to. So let's turn this back off, and we'll go out and run it with a higher brake percentage. All right guys, so this is our stock run at 62.5% brake percentage. I don't know why those are such odd percentages, but 62.5%. We're gonna start down here, we're gonna give it full throttle to about where I'll be standing. Then I'm gonna go full brake from that point until this thing just stops and falls over. We'll mark that point, then we'll go inside, we'll change our setting. We're gonna go up to the 87.5, I think it is, or 86.5, whatever these weird percentages are they have in there. And then we'll repeat the same test. Hopefully we'll be able to see a difference between the stopping area, and you guys can see it on video. I know this is not a perfect demonstration, but there's really not a great way to show this, and hopefully this will be good enough. So I'm gonna back the camera up so you guys can get a full view of the run here. and see about where this thing's stopping. All right guys, so I got this thing in on-road mode, and I do have my slipper clutch loosened quite a bit to keep the wheelies down. You'll notice how this thing won't wheelie out of this launch right here. It'll stay down on the ground and get quite a bit more acceleration. I've played around with this a lot, and it makes a huge difference on the amount of speed I'm gaining in this little area right here. So if you don't know how to adjust your slipper clutch, go check out my video on that. All right, so we're gonna mark that spot right there. So the far edge of this ramp is right where the front tire sits. Now we will change our brake percentage and see how far it takes us to stop in the same spot. All right, so now we're set at our 87%. We're gonna give it full throttle to this point, brake again, and see how far it takes us to stop. Gained a little bit. Let's try it one more time. It looks like we only gained about 2 foot or so, 2.5 maybe. So I went ahead and bumped this to 100% brake because I feel like the 2 to 2.5 foot is actually pretty good when you think about it, because that's going to equal out to a lot more at farther distances, higher speeds. You know, I'm just a redneck out here in the friggin' heat trying to figure this out, so I don't know those calculations. But even on a track, if you're running this thing, you're coming off of a landing, 2 to 2.5 foot is quite a bit. You know, if you're hitting a landing right here and you've got a turn, that 2 to 2.5 foot is probably going to make the difference whether you're in the pipe or if you're still able to make that turn or even make the turn tighter. So I bumped it to 100%. We're going to try it again and see if we can tell the difference. So on this concrete, I really can't tell much difference. We're still, I mean, maybe 3 feet now. You know, there's some variances between when I'm hitting that brake, obviously. So it's not the greatest way to figure this out, but I do feel like there is more brake to this thing now. I will really just have to kind of run it to tell. I notice it is dragging the rear tire now. I can actually see it drag that rear tire, whereas before it wouldn't lock that rear tire up. So that's pretty cool. It may actually help us kind of slide into some turns. It could throw us off a little bit, but I feel like it locking just a little bit. I'll try to get some shots of that. It's definitely a way to tell that we're getting more brake out of this. So you'll notice when your roller wheels here get really worn and your back tire is really worn, even on the concrete, can't hardly get this thing to self-right itself anymore. I may have to adjust those roller arms. So here I went in and set the brake to 20%, the lowest, whatever it was, it's 20-something%, the lowest it would allow. Because I was working on this video and I just wasn't happy with the way the results were showing. I could feel there was more brake, but I just didn't think you guys could really tell it. So this running here is at the 20-something% brake. And you can tell, you can really hear the brake applying, like the when I'm starting to slow down here, all the way down through the brake's on. And it's just lightly slowing down. So I ran like this for a pretty good little bit, just to give you guys some clips here. You can kind of see and hear this thing. And then I went back in and I put the brake at 100%. So that's the biggest gap we could get between the two. And you can definitely tell this thing on 100% brake, it's locking the rear a little bit. It's not fully locking it, but you can kind of hear it skidding that rear tire. And we're getting a lot more braking power. So it definitely is making a big difference. It's just hard to tell between those few little increments. My test, you know, I was afraid it was a little inconsistent. So I wanted to kind of be sure that we were getting more out of this, and we were. So I'll put pack after pack through this thing today, just playing around with it out here on the concrete, playing with these different settings, because I want to make sure if I recommend you guys do this, that it's worth your money and your time, okay? I don't want you to buy this thing and play around with it and be like, well, that didn't do nothing, you know. And in my opinion, it's kind of a must-have for this. If you're going to be going from dirt to concrete or whatever, racing it for sure, and even just running straight lines on the pavement and stuff, I think you're probably going to want to adjust that brake. I couldn't tell a huge difference going from the 60-something that it is stock to the 80. We could see a little bit when I did the test there, but it's kind of hard to judge that if I'm hitting the brake at the exact same time every time, and there's a lot going on there. But when I put this back down to the 20-something%, the lowest brake setting, you could see a huge difference going from that to like 100%. And that just really shows that we are getting more braking there. So that's why I threw that in there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I got a lot more coming on this. I got some pinions on the way. We're going to play with different pinions and trying to get a little more speed, less willy, and just lots of stuff coming up. So don't forget to like, subscribe, click the bell, and I appreciate you guys watching. Peace.